Hi, thank you for joining me in this presentation of Assignment 7.2 in Course 502, Health in the Built Environment. Our assignment asks us to design a visual representation of a framework of sustainability and health as it pertains to our case study. My case study, to summarize briefly, is itself a feasibility study of a framework to determine whether it's possible to come up with a standardized metric to assess energy consumption at different stages of a product's life cycle. And the goal is to ultimately reduce energy use in order to make it sustainable so that it can be supported by available renewable energy infrastructure and capacity. So first of all, I've broken up the product life cycle into three distinct stages to assess energy consumption. Stage 1 is production, stage 2 is usage, and stage 3 is disposal. Notice I've color-coded them. That is arbitrary. Those colors are not important, except they will be consistent throughout this presentation. Okay, so here's the basic model or concept of this framework, or of this design. Let me go through all the elements. We have the three different stages represented as circles. As you can see, these circles have different sizes, and they are touching, they're tangent to each other, and they are all within this larger encapsulating circle. So I call this larger circle the circle of sustainability, where everything inside the circle is considered sustainable, and everything outside the circle is considered unsustainable. Everything outside the circle is considered unsustainable. The circles, the size of these circles is relative, and this is qualitative. So the way these circles are represented is only to give a point of reference and a rough idea of the relationship between the three stages in terms of their energy usage. Here's an example of a product, an arbitrary product. So because we're looking at energy usage, and I wanna focus on using renewable energy as a means of obtaining sustainability. So I'm defining this circle of sustainability as inside is renewable energy, outside is fossil fuels. So the metric is how much energy do these different stages require. So in this case, the most energy consumed is at the product use stage. The least is at the disposal stage, and you can see that both the product use stage as well as the production stage stick out of the circle of sustainability. So what that means is that they partially use fossil fuels, and whether that's part of the process or whether it's because the available renewable energy capacity cannot support them is something to be assessed on a case-by-case basis, based on the product, based on production companies, etc. So how do we make that scenario more sustainable? Okay, first of all, I'll introduce this other concept, which is where the circles overlap. These are areas where energy use is shared. There's some shared processes that don't have to be mutually exclusive. And so that reduces the total area, which represents the total energy used qualitatively. So in this case, what I did is I essentially left the usage stage circle where it is. I moved it a little bit, but I moved the production stage circle closer into the circle of sustainability so that it is entirely inside the circle of sustainability. And in order to do that, it had to overlap with the product usage stage. Yeah. So the production stage is now fully within the circle. So just to summarize, I didn't change the size of the blue circle, the production stage circle. I simply moved it into the circle of sustainability. And I could do that by requiring that these processes use renewable energy, or relying simply on these overlapping processes to reduce the energy that's used. So let's take a look at another case here. In this scenario, the product usage stage exceeds the capacity for renewable energy resources. Meaning whatever is happening in this stage, it's using too much energy to be sustained by renewable energy alone, or it requires fossil fuel to use it in some way, some capacity. And there's an overlap between production and disposal, as well as an overlap between product usage and disposal. But I wanted to point out that there is no overlap between product use and production in this scenario. So how do we make this more sustainable? Once again, there's a number of ways we could do this. In this case, I shrunk the circle, the product use circle, which represents simply using less energy. So one example of this, I'll touch on in a little bit, is the use of incandescent versus LED light bulbs. So shrinking the circle, the product use circle, would be equivalent to switching to a more energy efficient product. And notice that I didn't create a new overlap between product use and production. This is part of this model, is that it retains these relationships. Here's another example. In this example, I thought about a gas-powered car. So let's break this down. Here's the production stage, energy use. I probably should have made the product use larger because it uses a lot of energy over its lifetime. And the disposal stage is right here. Notice there's no overlap between these at the moment. And notice that the product use circle is completely outside of the circle of sustainability. That is because it is a gas-powered vehicle, and it uses 100% gas, fossil fuels. So it does not it doesn't have any part within the renewable energy circle. Still, though, how do we make this scenario more sustainable? Well, one thing we can do is to reduce production energy, which is what I did here. This is represented by reducing the size of the production circle. And I figured in doing so, creating more disposable goods may increase the energy required for disposal in this life cycle. And notice no change here to the product use circle. And I did create new overlaps between production and product use, and between production and disposal. And that was based on just thinking about the situation and what outcomes could be. But this is qualitative and representative, and the size of these circles are relative to each other. Anyway, there are 2 overlaps here now, but still no overlap between the product use stage and the disposal stage. So we retained that relationship, but created 2 new areas where processes can be shared to conserve energy. So let's take a quick look at this model for incandescent bulbs next to this model for LED bulbs. And let's note some of the differences. For one, production in incandescent bulbs consumes less energy than production for LED bulbs. Energy usage at the consumer stage uses a lot more energy for incandescent bulbs than for LED bulbs. This we're very familiar with. This is simply energy efficiency in the product. And finally, LED bulbs are easier to dispose of. They're recyclable. They're easier to dispose of than incandescent bulbs. So the LED side has a larger production circle, smaller product use circle, small enough that it can be powered by renewable energy sources, and a smaller disposal stage. So we can see right away, and that's the idea with this design, is we can very quickly see that the LED model scenario is more efficient, more energy efficient, not just in the use stage, but in its life cycle than incandescent light bulbs. So let me go over the interventions here. This is basically what we were looking at. How do we take a scenario and make it more sustainable? Okay, this design is really good, I think, for comparing similar products side by side, but also I think that it can be used as a tool to brainstorm how the life cycle of a product can consume less energy. The first intervention is to simply reduce the size of the stage circles. This can be done in any way that results in using less energy. So could be creating more energy efficient products, could be simply using less energy, in the case of a car, driving less. So that's one intervention that we can use, and I've talked about this in the product use stage, but this is equally relevant in the production and disposal stages as well. Next intervention is the overlaps. So the overlaps is, in essence, consolidate the energy use, where one process that is part of both stages can be combined. So even though the stages are independent, that process belongs to both of the stages. And in doing that, we reduce the total area of the circles, which allows them to more easily fit within the circle of sustainability. The last intervention is to move the circles into the circle of sustainability. So again, any section that's outside of the sustainability represents an area where energy use requires fossil fuels. So moving the stage circle into the circle of sustainability is practically like ensuring that there is renewable energy capacity for that stage. Although this tool is not precise for making any kind of energy measurements, it gives a rough idea of how the different stages interrelate, and although they are each independent stages, they are part of the larger life cycle, and so they each contribute to that. And even though they each have their own fuel source potentially, we're looking at the larger life cycle to understand how we can reduce energy to meet renewable energy and sustainability goals. Again, the goal of my case study is to come up with a metric that can be used to assess energy throughout the life cycle, also to create energy goals, for example, and to give products a relative rating on their energy sustainability. I believe that having a concise way to digest this information on energy use and the product life cycle in the 3 separate stages is really useful especially to compare the sustainability of different products in terms of energy use. However, I also think that this visual model could be applied to other frameworks than just energy, than just the life cycle. And I think that circle of sustainability can be used in other ways as well. I also hope that using this tool for real product scenarios would perhaps help to reveal some data about their use, which can be used for a better assessment of different stages specifically, and where in the product life cycle we can target for the most efficient reduction of energy consumption.